Work ethic wasn't really a strong part of me, even though it was attempted to be instilled in me by my mom. But she would always say, like, work hard. You have to work like 10 times harder than a white person to get like the same position. But despite that, I still descend to a kind of hopelessness when a lot of things would happen in school. You get frustrated with the teacher because you keep getting in trouble for stuff that, like, you didn't do. Like, for instance, a whole group of friends will be talking. And, like, a group of my friends will be talking. And then another group of friends will be talking, like, 2 seats behind me. But, like, we'll get called upon, you know? Stuff like that just really makes you angry at the teacher. I guess the constructive way to shut them up would be by working or doing more work. But we weren't thinking like that. We weren't thinking that we would get back at them by showing how much better we could do in the class. We were thinking that we would get back at them by not doing our work, which I guess isn't really the smartest thing to do because it only hurts you in the end.
What is so interesting to me in the student monologue is that she lays it out for teachers to understand the thinking processes that a lot of students go through. When students feel powerful emotions in the classroom, in this instance, the student feels like the teacher is singling her out and treating her unfairly for something that she did not do. The student has a reaction to the teacher. And then the student has to, in the moment, come up with a way to preserve her sense of self-worth that she feels is being demeaned and chipped away at. And the way that the strategy that she came up with is, I'm just not going to work for this woman. She doesn't see me, she doesn't understand me. Why should I do the work and produce in the presence of this kind of treatment? I think it's really important for teachers to see that the resistance strategy that kids come up with in the moment makes sense to the child. However, as we know, that kind of a strategy of resistance in the long run can lead to all sorts of problems. And the student herself admits that that she should have come up with a better strategy. She should have buckled down. She should have done some work for the teacher. But that's not what she was thinking in the moment. Short-term, crisis-oriented, how do I get through the moment? That's where students are in these moments where powerful emotions are key.
The reason that I thought it resonated so much with what we heard from so many of the teachers that we interviewed and held focus groups with was this idea that teachers really wonder what their role is in working with students, like we heard in the monologue. And particularly some of the white teachers that we talked with worried out loud about whether or not they were in the position to talk about what role race might be playing in a student's frustration or sense of hopelessness. And insofar as those teachers felt withdrawn or avoiding the topic of race, then that undermines not only their teacher, but also undermines the chances for students of color. So hopefully the Project ASSERT materials are meant to open up much more self-reflection about the role that student resistance is playing in evoking teachers' own sense of emotion, teachers' own sense of effectiveness in the classroom. And then from self-reflection, moving into strategies for improved dialogue between teachers and between teachers and their students.
And just as the student, just as the teacher has to understand the ways in which emotions may be undermining her practice, students themselves need support, often from adults in their lives, to help them to see how the strategies that they adopt may indeed be undermining their own educational success. So when we talk about resistance strategies for liberation, those strategies, rather than being crisis-oriented and survival-oriented, are strategies that kids can adopt that are self-affirming and self-determining.
Thought that I had about the student monologue resonating with our work. And that had to do with the student reminding and remembering her mother's own cautions to her about what it is that she's going to need to do in order to be successful in the world. And it's standing in for caring adults who are going to pull students of color aside and say, look, here are the barriers. Here are some alternative strategies. And insofar as white teachers are not feeling comfortable to do that, then we have a serious problem on our hands. And as we listen to the teachers that we've talked to, they talk about emotions that they have that get in the way of being able to do that effectively. Emotions like guilt, emotions like defensiveness, emotions like hopelessness about the urgent neglect of resources in their schools.
Right.
So hopefully the materials are going to allow open space for those kinds of conversations, rather than having teachers feel isolated in their own classrooms, unable to connect up with other teachers who may feel the same sets of frustrations, and also rethink and re-examine some of their own strategies for working with students who themselves are struggling.